The world is broad and wide. Its people are rich and poor, far-flung. To travel to them takes courage. To settle in new waters needs strength. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. To settle in new waters, one needs an anchor. Chartres, France, is a long way from our wide brown land. To have travelled so far must mean there is so much need. The Sisters of St. Paul de Chartres have been seeking those in need for 300 years, and they find them. 300 years. 1696, Libreville, France. Poverty was endemic. A young priest, Father Louis Chouvet, had a dream: to educate the children that they might rise above their poverty. Chouvet enlisted the help of selfless young women to teach them to teach. Among these young women was Marie-Anne de Tilly, a woman who forsook nobility to give service to the uneducated and the poor. The word of this education of children and young women in the light of Christ's teachings spread. Though Marie-Anne would die young, something wonderful was born in Libreville and grew in Chartres. Invited to Chartres, Father Chouvet and 4 sisters began work.
Tomorrow we'll see the opening of our free school for children. Tomorrow the visiting of the sick and poor will start in our parish.
They kept no records, no statistics. They care, like St. Paul, with selfless love. And the order of the Sisters of St. Paul, under the gaze of Chartres Cathedral, grew. Cayenne, French Guiana, where no one else would go, 4 sisters of Chartres left all they knew to care for the ill in a hospital in the hot, disease-ridden colony. A legacy of mission, of hearing the call, of caring and loving the needy wherever they are, had begun. Even though fear and turmoil, arrests and fear of death ruled revolutionary France, another revolution was taking place.
The Sisters of St. Paul have as their goal to serve and relieve suffering and poverty-stricken humanity in hospitals and other places of this kind, even outside of France in the colonies, as well as to instruct the children.
As the colonies of France expanded, and as word of the gracious Pauline care given by the Sisters of St. Paul spread, they found poor everywhere. Poor in food, in health, in spirit, in love. As Marie-Anne de Tilly was tested by her family's rejection of her task, so her sisters have always been tested by catastrophe, both natural and acts of man. By the Second World War, the Sisters of St. Paul were giving apostolic care on almost every continent. When oppression is at its harshest, love is needed most. Sisters clung to their faith to see them through wars in Saigon, France, the Philippines, Europe, China, and Asia. Chartres itself was bombed. Sisters in Japan were in concentration camps. Sisters elsewhere lost their lives. Why? Why struggle in the face of adversity? Wars continue. Rebuilding the broken never ceases. There are always sick, always poor, always children needing care and love. The Lord is the source of my light. Light finds the lost and guides the seeking. Australia. It's called the lucky country. It is blessed with wealth, health, democracy, freedom of speech and worship. Why would the Sisters of St. Paul, given to caring for the abandoned, educating the ignorant, and healing the sick, come to a country so free of these problems? There is always a need. Even the richest man can be poor in spirit. Even the healthiest girl can feel alienated and unwanted. The founding ethic of Father Chauvet was to educate in the glow of Christian love. In the 1980s, the Australian government relaxed its legislations allowing Asian students to share in the quality of Australian education. At last, students from abroad could pursue professional and academic studies in Australian universities. But in order to enter university, all students need preparation in senior high school. In 1983, Mother Lucy Goh and Sister Miriam Deleuze visited Australia at the invitation of Father Pascal Chang. Their dream was not so far from Father Chauvet's. They wanted to open a school where students from Asia could learn the English language and gain admission to the wonderful learning opportunities of Australia's tertiary institutions. Here was a need to be filled, and where there is a need is the spirit of St. Paul. Because the anchor drops only means the journey is over. The hard work is just beginning. In 1984, 3 sisters from St. Paul's Convent in Hong Kong arrived in Sydney, Australia. Their new home and their new labour of love was a century-old Dominican convent in Moss Vale. Moss Vale is an idyllic rural town, 130 kilometres south of Sydney. The sisters renamed the convent in Elm Court Aurora, New Dawn. A new chapter in the history of the Sisters of St. Paul de Chartres had begun. The centre of Christianity, the holy mystery of death and resurrection, can be seen in many ways. With each hardship endured comes a new opportunity, a new resolve. The sisters opened the doors of Aurora College to a total of 13 students. This disappointment did not deter the sisters. Because they had faith, their needy work would lead to greater times. Today, from its hard and humble beginnings, Aurora College has not only fulfilled, but exceeded all dreams. The beautiful, peace-inspiring grounds, nearly 18 acres, was purchased in 1987. St. Joseph's Boarding House, a carefully planned building with 121 private bedrooms and every convenience to make boys feel at home, was completed in 1991. St. Mary's Boarding House, with 105 private rooms for girls, was completed soon after. New science labs, computer labs, new hall, and classrooms make the college the best equipped and most modern school in the locality. A fish out of water is lost. Everything needs to find its place. Moss Vale must seem a world apart for many of Aurora's students. It's a long way from Asia Pacific, Japan, China, even Israel, to the wide open space of New South Wales. The relaxed country lifestyle of Moss Vale must seem nothing like bustling Hong Kong or Seoul. For 300 years, their sisters have been friends for the lonely and guides for the lost. This spirit of charity makes Aurora wonderfully unique. Aurora is proud of its caring staff, skilled educators chosen for their ability to listen and give. Independent and creative thinking is emphasized and nurtured. The sisters and staff at Aurora know the mind and spirit don't stop growing when classes end. Growth, physical, social, intellectual, and spiritual. Patient teaching, availability, and gentle guidance help foster world citizens with Christ-centered attitudes. Aurora's students are equal to the best schools in New South Wales. Over 95% of Aurora graduates are offered those cherished places in Australian universities. But just as important are the unbroken links formed between the sisters and staff at Aurora and the hearts and spirits of the students. Simplicity. It is one of the cornerstones of the Order of St. Paul of Chartres. The sisters have no rank. They believe in addressing the most basic needs first. Need for healing, for learning, for food and shelter. Lane Cove is one of Sydney's northern suburbs, 2 hours north of Mossvale. It's here the Sisters of St. Paul established a house, a home for those without guardians. The units are intended for students of Aurora College who have no guardians to stay with over long weekends and breaks. But the 5 modern units in Landers Road have become much more. The search for the block began in 1989. Now, the ideally situated units are a centre for the sisters' work in Sydney. Here they can give company to students who would otherwise be alone in a strange country. But of course, it's not only students who sometimes feel alienated. Many sisters from overseas come to Australia to learn. Lane Cove is the perfect place for these young women to meet their sisters as friends, confidants, and guides. Even a city as prosperous as Sydney has people who are sick, who are marginalised, or feel in need of a caring hand. The sisters move through the community, sharing and learning, visiting the aged, the ill, and the lonely. They work with the Chinese Catholic community in Parramatta, taking Mass with them, sharing their strength and gaining from theirs. In every city, there are homeless, old and young. The sisters teach from the scriptures in public schools, including Lane Cove West and Artarmon. Blessed by Bishop Heaps in 1991, Lane Cove units are themselves a blessing indeed.
To Mother Lucy Go, I'm Father Albert Chan, chaplain of the Chinese Catholic community in Brisbane. I have a dream that one day a congregation of Chinese sisters would start a nursing home here.
So began another blessed venture of the Sisters of St. Paul of Chartres. The need was for sisters to care for and understand Brisbane's elderly people. But of course, from small dreams can grow great realities. With the invaluable support of the then Archbishop Francis Rush, St. Paul de Chartres Retirement Villa opened in 1992. It is now a living, joyful testimony to the will, vision, and faith of the Sisters of St. Paul. Here, the retired, elderly, and infirm from all walks of life find comfort, independence, peace, and a gentle atmosphere of pastoral care. The hostel houses 60 residents and 4 sisters, 9 carers, kitchen and domestic staff. In the beautifully landscaped grounds are 46 independent living units for residents who cherish their ability to look after themselves, yet also desire the security of knowing capable help is close at hand. A community is not formed once and for all. It has to be created anew every day. The villa is much more than food, medication, and beds. Residents at St. Paul de Chartres Villa are respectfully supported socially, physically, and spiritually. Serving the aged 24 hours a day is a labour of love, both meaningful and rewarding. to help the elderly come to terms with the compromises of aging, to ward off loneliness, to be there to share the beauty always in the world, to experience the joy of giving joy, and to learn. The villa is peaceful, fun, secure, a haven. A chapel ensures Mass can be celebrated daily, and private time with God is always available. What makes living here so special is the giving quality of care. The residents know the villa exists not for profit, but for service. What you have done to one of these most humble of my brothers, you have also done to me. The hard work is taken care of. Every service has been thought of, with regular professional visits. And visits outside are always different and filled with laughter. The residents often welcome visits from family, but they are their own family too. And they, the sisters' family, giving and teaching as much as they receive. In the future, a nursing home is hoped to provide a final, more definitive level of care for those who wish to stay in the warm circle provided by the sisters at St. Paul de Chartres Villa. The work never ceases. As the Father sent me, so I am sending you. The Sisters of St. Paul de Chartres have heard their calling. As poverty calls out to poverty, simplicity to simplicity, work to work, in 28 nations around God's world, there are the lost and unloved who need the human touch of Christ. In Peru, rife with abject poverty, children desperately need careful attention that they might better their lives. Treating the poor and sick lepers in the Philippines and Madagascar with the human dignity they deserve and cherish, bringing Christian values and strong hands to one of Earth's most destitute countries, Haiti. Rising above the demands of caring for cerebral palsy patients in Canada, in the service of hospital patients in almost all the countries they anchor in, continuing to brave arrest and hostility, and educating the children. The daring spirit of St. Paul has sent over 4,000 brave women around the world. They meet as sisters, experiencing the joy of community, the purpose of bringing the good news of the coming of God's kingdom. No boundary is too great, not race, not age, not health, not religion, not distance. Their mission calls them to cultures and peoples so rich and so varied, we can only envy their courage and their faith. They are bound together by the vision of a young priest and the bravery of a young woman 3 centuries ago. 2 people who said, "I will do it." I made myself all things to all men in order to save some at any cost.